Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, as always, Ben Thomas. One of my favorite things about coming back from trade shows and trips and events in Las Vegas and other places that have casinos and gaming is I'm constantly reminded of how much our industry plays a pivotal role, especially increasingly in those communities, whether it be through OEM technology on slot machines or payment terminals or LED walls or digital signage throughout the casino. You can't walk into a gaming institution these days and not see our technology literally in some cases spilling off of the walls. But one of the conversations sometimes that I think that we may not have as we should is some of the ramifications of what that means for our industry, not only from a market development standpoint, but from a technology compliance and security standpoint. There's a lot of regulations that industry specifically is subject to that maybe other verticals like UCC and education and even hospitality to a larger extent may not be as stringent on. So I wanted to have a conversation today with somebody who's gotten to live really across both sides of that world, from a technology installation and hardware delivery side of things, but also kind of the software side of things. And that's Christopher Justice, who is one of the board members for the American Gaming Association. Christopher, thanks so much for coming on today.
Hey Ben, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, absolutely, Christopher. It's good to have you back on the show. And I want to ask to kind of set the table, right? A lot of our audience on this show skew a little bit more engineer, product centric, sales, but we don't always get to have the conversations and talk to our end users and some of our applications. The world of casinos and gaming really is unique when it comes to things like compliance, because even in the world of sports betting, you've got bandwidth requirements, and you've got secure cybersecurity requirements for all sorts of different things. But I want to ask, on a high level, maybe what are some of those requirements that's asked from a technology standpoint in the world of casinos and gaming that may not be applicable throughout the rest of the technology side of things?
Well, those are really good questions, because part of especially when you get into the world of gaming, and coming to it from my perspective, where deep-seated expertise in the payments world, so it really creates this very unique intersection where highly regulated payments, highly regulated gaming all comes together, and so it does present its own unique sets of challenges. And I think overall from a regulatory perspective, one of the gaming laboratories, GLI, created a set of standards that are all documented, at which gaming technology then is tested against to make sure that the software itself or hardware complies with all of those various regulatory standards. Then you start layering onto that some of the other three-letter acronyms like PCI compliance, AML, and KYC, know your customer compliance, responsible gaming. There are just a variety of layers of regulatory standards that all have to be met in order to operate successfully within the gaming space.
It's funny to walk into a bank versus a casino, because exactly like you mentioned, the gaming industry in a lot of ways resembles a lot of the same requirements as the finance industry, right? From a compliance standpoint, from a security standpoint, whether that be with ATMs or payment terminals or different things. But one of the places that you see a lot of threats coming these days, especially as you see a lot of devices become connected, whether it's via 5G or cellular or just IP connectivity in general, is that world of cybersecurity, right? Whether that is, I'm a digital signage provider and I need to make sure that my odds are actually updating in real time with what's happening at the books, and that those odds are translating to the kiosks, and that somebody's not hacking the system because our bandwidth requirements are too low for real-time betting. There's a lot of different frustrations and conversations around that world as we sort of expand. But I want to ask about cybersecurity specifically, right? Everybody's always looking for an edge, whether that's matters of milliseconds to try and cheat a game or to have an advantage in a sports betting standpoint, and people will do things to either nefariously or in some cases on accident to breach some of those systems. From a cybersecurity standpoint, what are some of the requirements that we have to deal with now, maybe that weren't even in the conversation, maybe even 10 years ago?
Well, You're bringing up a terrific topic, because I think, like most areas, technology is expanding so much faster than regulations can even hope to keep up with. And so the challenge too then in the gaming industry is gaming regulations are in and around some of the things I talked about, right? Fair play, integrity, etc. Gaming regulations don't look at all really around compliance with data security or technology standards. So therefore, you could have a gaming compliant system that is terrible when it comes to cybersecurity, whereby the vendors need to then look at some of the other things like NIST, uh, PCI DSS, and other standards to layer in and around their applications. Because let's face it, just because you're compliant with a gaming reg but failing on data security does still leave you open to PCI vulnerabilities. Some of the European and California standards or individual state standards. And so you've got to really be looking at layer upon layer of technology solutions, if you will, which really will boil back down to having an organization that has a culture of compliance to look at things that are beyond maybe just the straight point between A and B, which is I need to be gaming reg compliant, but let me look at all of these other standards. Case in point, by the way, the breach that happened to MGM and Caesars over the course of the last 12 months, whereby all of their systems are gaming compliant, and they needless to say, right, support the industry, but yet people were able to get in using a variety of social and or technological uh, vulnerabilities, and penetrate those systems, and obviously do quite a bit of damage over the course of a short period of time.
Well, that was kind of my next question, right? Is that's exactly where my mind went when it came from a cybersecurity standpoint, because you're right. I like the differentiation that you have between gaming integrity and cybersecurity, right? Because I was even on a cruise last month, and you're able wirelessly and digitally to turn off the ability to play slots and things like that. It's great that all of our devices are connected until it's not, right? Whether that's somebody who gets in nefariously and steals somebody's identity and player information and data, and uses the console or the gaming device as a point of entry. But I want to ask kind of about the requirements from that privacy side of things. It's really interesting, right? Because you've got all sorts of different compliances, and even here in the States, whether it's GDPR compliance overseas, or CCPA, things like that. How much impact do those kind of decentralized and even disjointed regulations play, specifically when it comes to maybe manufacturers of gaming systems or even infrastructure software, things like that?
Well, those are all critical, but they are very much dependent on the manufacturer or the system developer to implement those kinds of technologies. And certainly, I can say from my time at Global Payments, AKA Pavilion, after our spinoff, we very much had a culture of compliance, because in our world, it was very much payments first, gaming second. So CCPA, GDPR, all of those other requirements, KYC, AML, anything coming down from the CFPB, we paid a lot of attention to make sure that everything that we deployed, first and foremost, right, protected the consumer data. And then after that, we could layer on the fact that now that we're protecting the data, how will those systems comply with gaming rules and regs that vary across the state? And so, but it was very much left and incumbent on us. You can it's maybe it's not obvious, but let me just point out the fact that these are all complex environments. You've got the complexity of us as a Fortune 500 company, also dealing with a multi-billion-dollar set of casino operators with varying levels of technology and network and infrastructure, which all has its own intricate complexities that make it very, very difficult. So, um, it's a tough job, if you will, for the CIO of one of those large organizations to figure out, are all of their vendors coming together and all doing the things that they need to do to work in concert to protect against malware or other cybersecurity vulnerabilities.
Well, and it's sort of a wild dance too between, I was at G2E last year, and you've got the game developers, the software providers, you've got the OEM manufacturers, you've got the people making the buttons, and somehow, some way, they're all kind of synchronous with each other. And then obviously the payment terminals and things like that, all built into this one device. But what's happened as we sort of combine technologies, not only just in the world of gaming and casinos, but even globally on a macro level, where you know as everything sort of conglomerates into connected devices, the decision makers and the owners of these devices are sort of changing. And I want to ask, at a casino and a gaming level, who typically ends up being kind of the on-site owner of a lot of these devices to make sure that the compliance is happening, that cybersecurity is in place, that people aren't breaching systems? Is it the IT folks? Is it the security folks? Or does it end up being even the slot techs? Who takes accountability for that typically on a granular level?
Well, I guess not to necessarily paint anybody with the same brush, but it would all point back to IT. Somebody in IT's got to be paying attention to these kinds of things, because I would say, and again, not to paint everybody with a similar brush, but for the most part, I believe the assumption is, oh, this is past gaming regulatory. This is on the casino floor someplace else. Somebody's had to check this. It's fine. Let's move it in and install it. But these are incredibly complex organizations whereby everything is tested against the set of standards. But the long and short of it is, when a game comes onto the casino floor, each individual environment is incredibly bespoke, because I might be using the same IGT or Light and Wonder system, but the modules that I've deployed may be different than the modules that you've deployed. So therefore, there is at least enough of a nuance in my infrastructure that's going to be remarkably enough different from yours, which again adds to the complexity, whereby I may say, wow, I want to encrypt my infrastructure, but I've got software applications that, are, some are brand new, some are 30 years old. How do I go about making sure that the data flowing through my now new encrypted infrastructure doesn't cripple my ability to do tax reconciliation, or handle customer data, or be able to deliver the right offers to the right player at the right time to help develop my organization. I want to do single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, et cetera. I mean, these are just these small words, right, are big challenges to implement to a lot of organizations when you've got dozens of systems that are dozens of generations old.
Well, and what's really interesting too, and this is, like I said, kind of a global challenge, is as IT continues to take on more and more of these responsibilities, they have to absorb and become subject matter experts on things that were not even remotely part of their purview previously. And one of the things too that stands out, I just had the chance to go to Resorts World last week, is there's a handful of areas or places inside that casino where the actual slot machines themselves are integrated with LED wall technology. And whenever somebody wins, the LED walls in the area go crazy. So now IT not only has to manage the cybersecurity and the compliance side of things, but they have to manage the freaking AV infrastructure, right? And worry about the lighting and in some cases HVAC automation. It's kind of ridiculous the ask that we're being made. But from an outsider's perspective, how have you seen casinos and IT staff specifically try and make that adjustment from a technology ownership perspective, especially as it decentralizes sort of across different disciplines?
Yeah, man, you're hitting on a hot topic, because there are quite a few organizations trying to do some of the things that you just said, and it layers on the complexity. Because when you think about, there's like 1,500 line items of data for every spin on a slot machine, because it's right. How much did I insert to make my deposit? How much did I play? how many lines, what are the outcomes of all of those lines, did I win, did I lose, blah, 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 right? Goes on and on and on. And oh, by the way, something in all of that data comes back out to trigger that light wall to where now I've got cash raining down on the walls and from the ceiling based on something that happened on my specific machine, which also then triggers sound and all kinds of other great things. Likewise, think about there, you add the complexity now of each of us individually as players, our behaviors, our preferences. There's a tremendous amount of data to where our ability to customize an experience for you based on the things that you want, right, will start to add incredible complexity to what the IT organizations are going to have to try to develop. Interfacing with mobile so that we can become mobile first, or at least something along that line. The ability then through your mobile to drive augmented or virtual reality. Where is your favorite game? Oh, by the way, Ben, if not only here's your favorite game, but here's $20 in free play if you want to play this other game that I think is similar and you might even like even more. There's so many great things that the industry can do with the amount of data that it has. It becomes just an incredibly complex puzzle piece, right, to try to figure that out. And I think the companies that are doing a good job, like you mentioned, Resorts World, Caesars is doing some similar things. The more they lean into creating those customized environments, the more they're going to do to differentiate themselves from the standard run-of-the-mill gaming experience that a lot of the other places are delivering.
Christopher, what I am always struck by when I go into a lot of these places is how technology, kind of like we mentioned, has moved just even off of the casino floor, right? You've got fully integrated rooms with TVs now that know your name, that know the offer you're staying on, know what tickets you have, can make recommendations based on things like that. So we're at the point now where we're at a really fully connected resort in a lot of ways, and it's interesting, obviously, as you cross things like hospitality from the hotel side, and then the gaming side, and then the technology integration side, and the theaters and performing arts side of things. It's become cohesive. One of the things that I'm struck by is that the user experience still actually is considered first in a lot of ways, right? We talk about a lot of these compliance standards and regulations and things like that, and we always kind of assume, hey, that's there to protect the company, or that's there to protect the corporation. But the inverse is true in a lot of ways, where it's actually there to protect the consumer, right? To allow them to know what to expect and to make their experience easier. And I want to ask kind of specifically about that user experience, right? As we continue to evolve from a technology standards and capability standpoint, how does that continue to better evolve and support that end user experience? Whether it's the person hitting the slot machine, or whether it's the person that's at the David Guetta concert at Dre's.
Yeah. I think this is the difficult part of the conversation, in that if you look at the typical casino reward system, they're all basically 4 tiers. And if I took MGM's name off the top and put Caesars or Stations or Boyd or any of the other names along the top, you'd be hard pressed as a consumer to tell the difference from one program to the next. So they're all trying to figure out how do they deliver that level of customization to you to help drive off your preferences. But a lot of the times, because of the complexity of everything that we talked about, they do have to basically deliver things down through one of 4 distinct ways that are very, very cookie cuttered, and a lot of which is to protect your consumer data, to make sure that the offers you get are the offers that you deserve, to make sure that somebody isn't able to tunnel in through the video screen, through the coffee maker, through whatever, to be able to gain access to your confidential information and not only expose you as a consumer, but expose the organization as a whole. So I think there's a lot of hard work being done by a lot of really talented people to figure out how to take those things to the next level. But right now, securing the edges and securing the infrastructure and controlling how those things are delivered is very much job one for the majority of the organizations.
You know what's wild is this thing right here is the great equalizer, right? This cell phone, because not only is it a touch point for your check-in, it's a touch point for your hotel key, it's a touch point because it's where you're booking your entertainment, it's a touch point because it's how you're betting with MGM locally. It's sort of been the great equalizer, but also one of the biggest kind of I don't know, wrenches in the whole system, because now the expectation for a lot of people, especially as sports book or sports betting continues to globalize, is that people, as a casino, you can't control someone's private device in theory, right? And that seems to be the greatest variable. But how do you see that cell phone, and maybe we'll call it the second screen experience, I guess, but how do you see that cell phone continuing to play a factor, and not only in the gaming side of things, but even in the hospitality side of the casino world?
Well, your second screen really became the first screen in America several years ago, replacing television and everything else. You start to look at the amount of time consumers are spending on that device is incredible. The amount of data that is produced by that device is incredible. I think ultimately the dream would be as a mobile, which should be as a mobile first industry, we would understand your play preferences, your behavior preferences, where you like to stay, what you like to eat, where you like to do whatever. Very similar to the way Google already knows everything about you and your preferences, because the more we can understand about you, the more we can deliver experiences tailored to you. Right? We see you, the fact that you are now in the casino, it's about dinner time. You're displaying behaviors that would say, Ben's getting hungry. Well, if you're not a fast food kind of a guy, I don't need to be saying, hey, by the way, we've got extra capacity here at Taco Bell, but I could utilize some of the data that we know about you to go, hey, we have created an incredible menu for you at Wolfgang Puck. Here's a couple of free cocktails. Here's something that would entice you to go to the restaurant because I've got excess capacity and I can seat you right now. I want to deliver an incredible service experience from the time you walk in the door to the time you leave, and I'm going to do all of that because I can leverage information that your phone already knows about you. That's where I think the industry wants to get. The challenge of a lot of that is a lot of the infrastructure that's within the casino, your player loyalty systems, the casino management systems, the slot machines themselves, while a lot of them are they're brand new themes, the technology in them, it's not your latest mobile phone, right? These are generations old, and trying to tie all that stuff together to be able to deliver this mobile first kind of capability is incredibly difficult. But where I think the industry needs to go is trying to think about this differently. And instead of saying, wow, I've spent 20 million or $200 million developing an infrastructure that I need to leverage to deliver that kind of approach. If I think about that differently and say, wow, Ben's carrying a device with him that's already got his behaviors that are enmeshed in Google and Apple and all of these other companies. What if I leverage that technology, right, to bring you and your preferences to me, and your system tells me what I should be doing as opposed to me having to figure it out and push it back to your system? If that makes sense. I think it's just a reverse way of thinking about innovation and delivering a better customer experience through the process.
Well, I think that's an incredible lens to look at, the crux of our conversation, which is kind of that world of compliance and certification, things like that, because it helps build a base for, our audience of tech manufacturers, service providers, folks really who say, hey, I've got great technologies, or whether I'm an OEM provider for a slot display, things like that. We've got great technologies that we're always finding different use cases for. And I think the gaming and casino market, whether it's, kind of that eye candy side of things where it's LED walls, lighting, even some sound, things like that, or actually part of the gaming or payment processing devices, we find ourselves in a lot more of these conversations as our technology continues to evolve. And I'll tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on and kind of setting that lens and setting that table for us, for our community.
Well, so happy to be here, Ben. Anything I can do to help. Hopefully this has given some folks some takeaway value to help them expand their business and deliver, frankly, better guest experiences for all of us who want to come enjoy gaming.
I agree with that, Christopher. I'll give you the last word here. There are a lot of folks probably listening for the first time who say, I really have to at least consider or look into getting into this world or forging partnerships and things like that. How do you recommend that people start that conversation? Is it through AGA or is it through a different provider?
Well, certainly the AGA can help because the AGA is connected to all of the manufacturers, all of the casino operators, regulators, et cetera, right? It is the community that is gaming. And so that's a great place to start. But I guess it would also depend as well on what channel folks are wanting to go through. There's plenty of ways to access the industry. It's certainly one that does warrant a little bit of research to make sure that whatever it is that you're wanting to do, that you have the capability of delivering it in a highly regulated environment.
Well, Christopher, thanks so much for coming on. We always love having you. Look, we've got to make you feel like a regular guest at this point because this is a conversation that comes up. It feels like every single time we have a conference in Vegas, which is 3 or 4 times a week. So it's a nonstop conversation that we have, but I appreciate you sharing your insights with us today.
Always, my friend. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the audience, too, for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe and check us out next time on Pro AV Today.